Uh, Greetings, everyone. If you're joining us in the chat, as always, good to see you, Mike. It's always nice to see Never Let the Machines Win and all of our other friends out there. Today's topic is negotiating, and we're gonna get to that. That's a meaty conversation, man. There is a lot to cover there, but of course, a little housekeeping first. For those of you who are new to the podcast, maybe listening back after the fact, we record this every Friday, just about every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, live here on the YouTube. So if you want to engage with us, you may certainly do so via that chat, that live chat on YouTube. We also have a call-in link above for anybody brave enough to want to have their voice heard on the podcast as well. So we always welcome that. I'm excited for today, but before we get into the main conversation, we have to do our normal thing, which is embrace the power of positivity and talk about the wins for the week. Everybody in the chat, as always, share something that was awesome that happened to you, some progress you're making on a project, something of that nature. Andrew, I'm going to put you on the spot first, and then Chuck, you're up with your win for the week. Let's go.
Alrighty. Well, I guess win for the week for us is we're tuning in some new products, and one of those being a bed adhesive for low surface energy plastics like polypropylene and high density
Ooh.
polyethylene.
Ooh,
So making some headway.
interesting. Good.
Yeah. So a little bit of a teaser.
We'll see that on your packaging someday soon, then, huh?
Well, it'll be its own new product. So,
completely new thing.
but
Okay.
it's it's been a long term project,
as most of these things are. Chuck,
yes.
Tell us what your win for the week is, my friend.
Win. I finally got this little circuit I've been working on for a while. You'll see it in my video released hopefully later today if everything goes as planned.
And what is that for people that are listening and don't have the advantage of seeing the little chip I couldn't visually identify it anyway. What does this thing do?
Well, you got to tune in and find out.
Oh,
so it's a mystery circuit board Chuck is holding up.
FilmItFriday.com. Check it out. It should release later today. But no, it basically it helps you monitor heat creep.
Very cool. Well, Chuck is notorious for coming up with these great little gadgets that make our 3D printing experience better. And it is a little bit. Let's just dive right into it because there is a little bit of an elephant in the room.
Going right in.
Anybody that's been following along this week on Twitter knows that there was some drama around one of your other electronics projects, Chuck. That was the bed leveling board. And first of all, before we even go into that, yeah, he's showing it now on screen here. Just tell people what it is and how it makes your 3D printing life better.
Basically, the beginner tries to use the paper method, and it's how much pressure do you feel in that paper, and it's hard to explain, it's hard to show. So what I did was
we're getting a little
and it is, but the LED when it just turns on will tell you when you got the height as you're adjusting your board. You go around each corner, and the G code that comes with it, and it'll help you level the bed and get a good level. So that was the purpose of this, and it was just to show people that you can get a level bed using this electronic device. And the popularity of it, I didn't originally planned to sell it. The popularity, I got so much requests, like, okay, we'll put it out there, and it's been extremely popular. So
yeah,
it's helped a lot of people. You look at the reviews, it works really well. So that's the device in question.
Cool. Yeah. So sorry for real quick. Sorry to interrupt, Chuck. It seems like we get a little bit of a warbly connection between you. Just to reiterate, this bed leveling board is a really slick device that just helps you basically get a better level instead of having to use a piece of paper or something traditionally, where you get a much more accurate reading when it makes contact with this thing. So go check it out. You sell it on Amazon, do you not?
Yes, it's sold through my business partner on Amazon. I like this, fully assembled with the end cap. Doesn't rely on the battery to try to balance it. And then there's a G code.
Mm-hmm.
That's the barcode right on the box. Download the G code, you put on the SD card, and it really just steps you through. And
Beautiful.
the feedback has been really positive. Helped a lot of people get their first bed level on their first 3D printer.
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
And you know, the reason we talk about wins every week is I think that it's important to have these wins, and especially in 3D printing where there are a lot of variables in getting a good quality print and a lot of frustration. And this is the bed level is the foundation of your print. It is the most critical, you know, thing. And so the fact that Chuck has invested his time and energy in developing this is actually great, because it gets people that win more quickly, so that they have the confidence to keep moving forward and keep experimenting and keep working with their 3D printer, not get frustrated. I know when I first got started, there was a lot of frustration around figuring out, even when I got all those points level, you know, we're dealing with cheap stuff where the bed itself was warped, and you know, and we've come a long way from those times, obviously. So the drama that I was referring to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
I'm just going to say that the number one feedback I get, because my channel is basically about helping people get started, especially with these low cost machines. The biggest feedback still is they have a hard time getting a good bed level, and people would quit through printing. They're so frustrated. So it's less about selling a product and more about helping the community and helping people not get frustrated and stick with 3D printing.
Right.
That really was the gist and the drive behind that module.
And a very you know, important aspect of the whole thing. So obviously the you know, community certainly appreciates your efforts in that regard. The drama that I was alluding to was obviously anytime you have a great idea like this, there are going to be those out there that want to, you know, copy it. There's competition. We are all aware of the fact that, you know, anything that you make that is worth doing will ultimately probably be copied, right? And so that's not necessarily, competition is not necessarily a bad thing, but the drama comes around the way that happens and the approach of all of that and the messaging and stuff behind it. So maybe you can speak to a second. There was a couple companies actually, but the big one that was focused on was one called G-Tech out of China that cloned your design without talking to you, consulting, and we'll get into the questions about patenting and all that stuff that are in the chat as well in a second. But is that the gist of it? It was basically somebody just took the design and without permission duplicated it poorly.
There's the key. Poorly. There's other designs out there that they're even worse, but
could always be worse.
Well, there's one out there's got a battery holder so tall you level on a ramp, you know. Okay, have you ever used one? You know, but at least they put effort into making their own creation, you know, where the one in question, the one that's really blew up, was the one that copied, you know, everything as best they could. But the thing is, what people don't understand is they call it switch and LED, big deal, right? It's a light bulb. It's whatever you want to call it. But every little component of electronics comes with pages and pages of specs.
Sure.
And it's going through those specs to figure out what key parameters are important or not important for an application. I mean, if you want to say switch and LED, you know, a laser level is a switch in LED. A lamp on a car is a switch on LED. I mean, it's just, they're different applications of the same thing, but it's, you know, and that's exaggerating a bit, but the whole idea is that it's how you use it. And so what I did is went through all the different specs of different components, trying to get the right ones to work together. And in the process, because of the COVID and everything else, we had two different components that end of life on us, so I had to go find another one. So there's a lot of work that went in behind the scenes to get something that I could repeatedly get a good bed level. I even did videos showing the accuracy because people question, how can you get that with a switch? And so I showed
Mhm.
that, and I didn't detail the specifics because that's part of the IP that my business partner wants to, that's how I sold the idea that they would help me build this thing because I
Mhm.
can't, I'm a YouTuber.
Yeah.
So all that becomes part of the negotiation, which what this was referring to.
Mhm.
So all that goes into it.
Yeah.
Um, and so to come in and just copy and say, oh, we'll just copy it, and it's easy. It's a switch and LED. I can tell you by looking at theirs without even playing with it, it's not gonna work. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you'll get the light to come on, but you'll go around the bed and you'll come back to that first point and you're gonna be like, wait, why is it giving me a different reading? Why am I not getting a constant level through here?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's because you don't understand the details. So
Right.
you did a poor clone and then never talked to me before you released this to the public. Never said, "Hey, I got something maybe a little better. Do you want to, work with us, or maybe want a little help? Could we hire you? Could we maybe
Could
license
license you,
whatever?"
sure.
No, this is a company that I've worked with in the past that I've helped
Mhm.
promote. I've never taken a dime of sponsorship, and they just basically leapfrogged me and
Yeah.
sold through third parties and blasted the world with this poor quality. I mean, now they're giving away spools of filament and throwing one in. So it's like
Yeah.
they've diluted the whole
Mhm.
concept in many ways. And I took it from a community point of view. If someone in the community or business like this is going to do that to some,
Uh-oh. Did we lose
we
him?
can't
Oh,
really
no.
stand that, because we
Yeah.
got to work together. Well, they did it to an influencer. And I'm not. I've had design stolen before. I'm not going to shut my mouth. I'm going to fight back.
Yeah. So
So that's where it all started.
let's dig in for a second on the the big question that's out there around the patent piece, right? And maybe you can speak for a
Mhm.
minute. This is not a patented design, and even if it was patented here in the U.S., it's not a Chinese patented design. So there's obviously we've had conversations about patents, trade secrets, and all of this stuff. What is your
Yep.
comment for that, right? Because there's that which is what we would consider ethical, and then there's that which is legal. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're in a kind of legal breach, but it's certainly not acting in good faith and certainly not being a good member of the community. What's your feels on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's the patent does not stop this from happening.
Right.
I mean, all it does is give you a basis to work from. You got to spend a lot of money up front, hire lawyers, and then once someone does copy it, because they will, it just gives you a basis to hire the lawyers and pay more lawyers and fight it again.
Yep.
And and so I don't have deep pockets. My business partner doesn't have deep pockets. We
Mhm.
didn't see this as a huge money. It's not a huge money maker.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if I got to pay for lawyers and patents, it's like, okay, then it's never getting off the ground. So we
Mhm.
knew at some point we would get clones, and we believe in our product, and that it works and it's better. And um even gone copyright, so we do what we can, but we never felt we're on an island like this. You can make something.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing that got me with this is it was someone within the community that I've worked with before, that I've helped promote, and didn't even have the respect for everything I've done for them in the past,
Yeah.
to just do
Mhm.
this. And then not only just make one, but make a lousy version, sell it to third parties now it's flooded the market.
Yeah.
Beginners are going to get a hold of this, be frustrated by the results they get. They'll blame me and my design don't work, and and
Yeah.
and uh,
Mhm.
and we're back to square one where they can't get a good bed level, and it's like, wow, you just took us backwards. And if you would have called me first, you would have talked to me, we could have worked on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they went so far down the rabbit hole now that even when they contact me after I complained, there's no real resolution, because
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Don't see a path
You
forward.
can't put the
Huh.
so that's why it's, and not just for me. I mean, I can take it. I don't, it's not that, it's the
Yeah.
profit. If I have to lose the whole thing, it's not a big deal. But it's the idea that someone in the community could come up with something really cool, and then I got to worry about this stuff being stolen like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then after a while, people won't do it. They just, we won't see the advancement, and that's when it all dies.
Well,
And
what
that's my fear.
what I feel like the interesting story. First of all, I'm sorry this is all going through you, and you're all going through with this, and that it's particularly bad because, like I said, this is not just a company out of nowhere that just decided to clone you. Like, this is somebody you've worked with before, and it feels like a particularly, terrible stab in the back in some regards. But the story as I see it that I find interesting is that we've talked before, Andrew, about patent is only as good as your ability to defend it, and in a lot of ways, if you do not defend it, you lose your patent there too. So it is a very expensive road to go down, and it doesn't necessarily protect you from this if you do not have the means to do that. What I'm really interested in about this story, and it's unfortunate if you don't feel like you're going to come to a resolution, but it is obvious that you have made waves, and it is obvious that there is an effectiveness to pressure campaigns within the community, especially something as niche and as tight-knit as the 3D printing community, where I hope it's going to make manufacturers like this think twice about doing stuff like this, because this is absolutely going to have an impact on their bottom line. Whether it's enough to put them out of business or whatever, like that's a whole different story, but it's not good, especially considering how many people in this community are their customers.
Yeah, I'm not looking at it. I mean, I didn't start this, I didn't look for this. I'm trying to help people level their bed.
Yeah.
And if there's another one that works or maybe better, it's like you advance the technology. Okay. I didn't open source it because part of it's because it's simplicity. But part of it is because then I have to share some key characteristics that I worked really, really hard on. And when we thought about it down the road, we may open source it.
Yeah.
But there's other ideas I'm working on maybe to improve it and things like that. So we always knew this was a possibility, and we're not against it. We're not, but it was the way it was approached, and like I said, someone I had worked with helped and promoted in the product, and I felt, if you do that to me, who else are you going to do it to? And so I had to speak up, and I didn't expect the backlash that I saw. Do that to fire up to the troops. I'm humbled by it, that they would think enough of me to trust me and know that I'm not trying to do anything evil here. I don't want to see this company go down, but the whole idea is that don't do this to people. Don't do this to people, especially in the community, and certainly don't hurt the technology that's going to help get us grow, let us grow, get more people involved, and that's ultimately what frustrates me the most.
That's well said. Yeah. And we could go on this. I mean, I know this is a bit of a digression from our main topic, but there are some components that I think we can learn and grow from on this. But we'll be watching to see how it develops. And I think it is good that you spoke up, and I think your points about not diluting the tech. The thing that's unfortunate is there would have been a million better ways to go about this that wouldn't necessarily have been that costly to the company or anything if the conversations were just had. Unfortunately, there's that's just not the way a lot of people think to do business, and that's unfortunate that we end up here. But let's if you want to,
it's number one rule. Yeah. It's the number one rule of what we're really talking, what the topic is, negotiation. The number one rule is communication. If you don't open up communication, if you don't have that relationship for communication, you're not going to have good negotiation. I mean, that's one. If you come in a used car salesman trying to sell you something, right away you back away because he's just trying to sell you something. But if that used car salesman were to come in and say, "How you doing? What's going on? You looking at a car? Okay, and eventually, maybe you don't have the car he don't have the car you're looking for, but at least he's developed that relationship, at least initially, even though deep down, he's trying to sell you a car. But
Sure.
that's how you sell. That's how you start. That's how you are successful in business negotiations, that I've learned, is first have that relationship. And when you don't follow that relationship, when you don't communicate, when you try to, go around things, that's when negotiations and things like this break down.
That was a masterful segue, my friend. Like, just jumped right in. I mean, I couldn't have done that.
It was
better.
Perfect.
I could not have done that better. Step one of we're just diving right into negotiating per Chuck is 100%. You should make videos, Chuck, and have a YouTube channel. That is so on point, guys. Like having that rapport, having that relationship. Andrew, when you're going into give us some of your, feelings around when you're trying to establish a rapport, getting involved in negotiating things you need. What is your, starting point?
Sure. Well, so I think before I get into that, first and foremost, there is an amazing book on negotiation that I have read and listened to multiple times, and it's something that I'm constantly doing because there's so much to learn from, and that's called Never Split the Difference. It's a fantastic book. It's I think the author is Chris Voss. He was a former FBI negotiator. And there's so many really good details.
Wow.
Yeah. So many good details in there. And, he basically breaks down what it is to be a good negotiator and how you start, going into these negotiations. Like, what is the end goal? Primarily, the first thing with anything is have for yourself a clear, defined goal. What is your yes? Because ultimately that's what you're going to get to. If you don't even know what you want, you can't be a good negotiator.
Yeah.
So that's rule number one, is figure out, get.
You can have rule number two. Chuck had rule number one, which is establish communication, which is
sure. Well, so the communication part comes after you know what you want, but we'll go with that.
Well, not for everybody.
We'll say rule number two is know what you want.
No, I think that's that's a very good point, because think about how many people you come in to a negotiation with, and they're either we can even get into don't negotiate with yourself, don't obviously knowing what you want and understand the communication of, and what are they asking for, right? Like, that's the baseline. Like, what are we even talking about here, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we've established a line of communication. Fantastic book recommendation, by the way. I'm going to check that out. And I'll throw it. Remind me afterward. I'll throw it in the description for anybody that's interested. We've been slowly talking about putting together a repository of valuable resources, and so that could be a good one. So Chuck, I'm gonna bounce back to you here. We've established communication. We're trying to figure out what we're talking about. So you know what you want. Now, how do we find out really what this other guy wants, so that we even have the starting point of where we need to be?
Well, that's why I said that communication is so key with the used car salesman. You listen. You talk, you listen. And, even if you know what you want, you may talk and listen to them and you find out they don't have what I want. Or if I get what I want, they're going to really lose. And that can be just as bad. I mean, you can win, but if you win and wipe out the other party or put them in a bad position, they're never going to negotiate with you again, or anyone else per se that knows them. So it's you've got to be, have the human aspect to it too, it's got to work for both parties. And you only learn that by communicating, by learning what it is that they're looking for. And if they're doing it too, they're asking you questions. It's, the person coming in says, do you have warranty with your cars? Do you, give me, what's the history of your, your shop here? Should I even be doing business with you? So it's a back and forth, right? You're just feeling each other out. And But deep
Hmm.
down, yeah, you know what you want, and you do need to know that going in because you can't learn it on the way. but yeah, to me, that's still, it comes back to communication and listening. Listening is so
Hmm.
key.
Absolutely. So
So, oh, yeah.
the things I would add to that, or just to distill it down, obviously, are the patience and time. Give it, space, and the mutual respect and discourse, because it's gonna take a little time to know who you're dealing with, what their style is, feel them out, and your point is so well
Hmm.
taken too, that you have to understand that they're trying to get something out of this too, and that there are tons of history is full of examples of negotiations where one side got too much and it ended up just destroying the entire thing, right? So it has to be sustainable to some extent. And if this is
Hmm.
somebody that you want to potentially, you have to know, is this somebody that you potentially are going to be doing long-term business with? You need to build that rapport and that trust and that relationship, and know that everybody's going to have to give a little bit, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that is the key to, I think, knowing that you netted out to a good deal, because a good deal isn't always about the win in the here and now, right? That's very
Hmm.
short-sighted. Like, if you're patient
Yep.
enough to realize that I am way better off taking the time to understand who this person is, what their needs are, so that we can long term hopefully have a relationship. So, the example, like, if you find a company that you can find a win-win with, where maybe you don't want to be producing these, that you might want to focus on product development and all this stuff, and get to a point where you find a partner that can take it to scale so that you can focus on the things that you want to focus on. And that can be a win-win. Maybe you're not getting to keep as much profit yourself, but they get a little bit, you get a little bit, and you get to focus on the things you like and offload some stress and all sorts of stuff. So the long game is the thing that
Hmm.
so many people miss, I feel like. And it just depends on what we're talking about, right? Sometimes, you have to understand, are you in it for the quick hit, or are you in it for the long haul? I don't know. Who wants to
Yeah.
Yeah.
jump on after that?
Well,
Quick hit.
I think.
Go ahead. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Well, no, I was just gonna, kind of elaborate on what Chuck was saying is when starting the negotiations, one of the successful tactics that is really talked about in this book is learning how to mirror. And make the other person feel comfortable. So listening, as Chuck was saying, having that communication, the biggest thing with negotiating is literally just learning to be an active listener.
Mm-hmm.
That means in
That's
learning
hard too.
not to talk, and use silence also effectively. Let them tell you what their problem is, or let them tell you what their goals are, and you sit there and listen, and you digest this, and you mirror this, and you create a comfortable atmosphere by basically kind of reiterating what they said, and playing to their empathy, and getting it to the next phase of the actual negotiation process,
Mm.
where you're actually starting to label what it is that they want. Now this is, primarily heavy in, like, maybe, hostage negotiation, where you're understanding where they're coming from, and you're labeling, oh, so it seems like you're doing this because of this or because of that, and you're going through this process. This can help in any negotiation, where it's like, what could we do to resolve the situation? I have taken this design and stolen it from you, Chuck, and now I'm selling it, and you're, quite unhappy. So now what it is you going to the table, asking them, listen, how can we resolve this? This is a big issue now, because it's now impacting my bottom line, because yes, I was the one in the wrong here, but now I've got to negotiate and figure out a way out, if you will.
That's a terrible
And
place to be
you know,
trying to negotiate from, right? Because you're automatically, you have
mhm,
bad faith action
exactly.
as a first line,
Mhm.
which is never a good
Yeah,
thing.
and you've essentially, they've essentially kind of violated this idea of being, in that good faith, where now it's like they have this problem of trying to, win you back, or stop doing what they're doing. But as a part of this whole process, I think you're doing a fantastic job. We saw the community kind of rally behind you, and they put a lot of this pressure on this particular company, and now it's basically forcing their hand. So obviously I can't say what's going to happen, but there are so many different aspects in going into negotiation, like different ways that you can go down.
Chuck, is that even a negotiation? I mean, you probably don't look at that as like there's anything to be negotiated. Like at this point, when somebody's coming back to you after they're only coming to you because they need something very clearly. They're like, oh, we need the bleeding to stop. This is painful for our PR and all that stuff. That's not negotiating. That's like, how do we make it stop? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, again, there was no communication up front. So by the time the communication started, things were already established. And so then I could quickly assess what they wanted. And I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah.
They wanted, from what I could see is once the community jumped on board. And again, I didn't post all that just to fire this up. I couldn't get a hold of them directly. So I frustrated. I posted on Twitter. I knew I'd get a little attention, but I'd hope they'd then get in touch with me. And I'm really humbled and like shocked by what the community did to come around. But really, in one respect, it makes sense too, because we're all potentially a target to this kind of stuff in many ways, stealing our content, stealing our files, and everything
too
else.
much.
So I'll be the poster child in this one because I can take it. But coming into the negotiation, I look at it's okay. You want this to stop? I'm not the community. I can't go to the community and say, you didn't like this, change your mind.
Yeah.
That's not. I don't have the control to do it. So how can I negotiate? And then the other side of it, I'm like, okay, maybe we could work something out between me and them. But once they started selling it to third party and put it up on AliExpress, and so anyone can start selling on eBay and Amazon and everything else, there's no control. I could make any kind of agreement with them, but how do I control everything else? So it's like, okay, this is where I'm at. I have a poor clone competitor out there now, which we always knew it would be there at some point, and we're prepared. I'm not covered. I'm not telling everything.
Let's
so there's we've got a great batch of product ready to go for Christmas and stuffing your stocking and filling our Friday toolkits and stuff. But as my business partner and I discussed it, we know where we're going. We know what we're doing.
You do.
I wouldn't have picked a partner that didn't understand the business we're in, right? So it sucks because it would have been nice to work with them. They have a great distribution. They could have came to us and become a reseller. We've got a reseller program where we could have worked with them, but that's not the choice they made, and that's okay.
I want to field some comments in the chat really quick because there's some good stuff. David Tobin had a interesting comment here, and Joel, welcome both of you guys too. Had some stuff too. He says one of his
guys, by the way, just absolutely awesome guys, best friends you could ever have.
Shout out to both of them. David says one of his top rules: whoever states the number first loses. So when we're talking about negotiating, there's that dance, right? Where it's like, what is it you want? Well, I don't know. What is it you want? So it's like, why do we flirt with each other in this manner when it seems counterproductive to like the communication piece that we're saying? Like, how do we even know what we're negotiating here when nobody's kind of tell us what they want, right? There is that mentality. If I show my hand first, I don't know. What do you think, Chuck?
My dad was actually a really, really good negotiator. He grew up basically almost without a dad, so he had to learn on his own. So he told me early on, if the communication isn't there, if you can't get that, then sometimes you do have to throw the number out.
Yeah.
And even though throw the number out, you lose. No, it depends on what number you throw out. So it's like, okay, you want to sell your car,
right?
And you won't give me, you won't give me a price. I'll give you $1. Oh, no way. No way. But look what we just did. We just started communication. So then you can come back and say, oh, okay, so you think your car's worth more than $1. What is it really worth then?
Yeah.
I mean, you won't give me what is it worth? You know, and it's amazing how throwing a number out, even though a ridiculous number, can sometimes get that communication going. And that's he taught me that, and I've used that a lot. It can work. It can work. But the goal is to use that just to get to the communication, because it's, you don't put a real number, you put a ridiculous number.
Right.
And so
well,
laugh.
and that's the thing. If you're really negotiating, nobody's throwing out the real number, are they? I mean, but it is a tactic. And Andrew, maybe you can comment on this, or you can add on to what Chuck said. It is a tactic to just be like, this isn't a negotiation. This is my best and final, right? And I'm just I'll put that out there, because that is literally like, I don't want to waste time with this. That is a tactic. I don't know. What do you think?
There is no.
Yeah,
there's no best final.
There's many different ways. There's many different ways, I think, to do this, and in many cases, I think we as people, we want to be, able to negotiate, but I think more importantly, what it comes down to is being heard by another person. Because a negotiation is quite literally a conversation with another person about an intimate matter. And, whether it's, negotiating a pay raise, whether it's negotiating a sale of a car, it's about being heard by the person, that's either in the position of power or, in the position who's, making that offer or that sale. I think that, yes, the general rule of, don't be the first to make the first offer makes a lot of sense in many cases. But I do think that there is merit to saying, hey, this is where I'm at. This is kind of my best and final. I don't think that there is truly a best and final. I agree with Chuck that, everything does, again, lead to negotiation, because we're all people, like I just said, and we want to be heard by someone else. What I found, though, in most cases, that's helped is when doing any sort of negotiation about anything, like purchasing or selling something, or trying to get something for a certain value, giving them a very specific number works way more than just giving them a round number. And I think the reason why is it gives them the perception that you've put thought into this.
Yeah.
So, I want exactly, $255,372, just whatever number, right?
I like that. Okay.
And while it might not, it might seem a little silly and people might see right through that, I think what it instantly, when you're thinking like, well, that's an oddly specific number, why is that specific? And then it changes the tone of the conversation a bit. Instead of just like, oh, I want $250,000 or whatever it might be. And generally speaking, I also think that if you are forced in a position where you have to make the first offer, you're gonna, want to go over, right? Like I posted the silly little meme, before this was, I want 5 wishes, and it's like, okay, we'll take 4. It's you want to get more than what you're wanting, right? But you have a number that you would be happy with.
Right.
So you don't start there, because then it's always going to go down.
Let's back up a second, Chuck, and I want to ask you what your thoughts are on this. But one of the things that occurs to me is as a society, and I'm talking about like American society specifically here, I would say that we have a tendency to not or negotiate. That a lot of our society is either afraid to negotiate, or just we look at things as like, well, that's the price. And is that one, do you believe that is the case? Because I've traveled other places in the world and where just like everything is a negotiation. What you go down to the market and you're constantly negotiating over the price of apples and all that stuff. Like, so how do we give people some tidbits in terms of like giving them the confidence that negotiating isn't necessarily a bad thing, and that you're not going to hurt people's feelings all the time, but it's how you go about it, right? What do you think?
I think it's a generational thing. There was a tweet that Samantha put out, how the different generations communicate.
I saw that. Sam Snyder, shout out. Yes.
I responded, my first choice is face-to-face, which wasn't, she said boomers, want to pick up the phone or whatever, but, and I'm not sure she understood completely what I was saying, but My generation and even the generation before me, we didn't have social media. We couldn't hide behind a computer, so to speak. You had to either physically, call on the phone or go see them.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with a family. My dad did flea marketing, so I grew up a 10-year-old kid. I was negotiating. I didn't pay. You don't pay what they're asking.
Yeah.
You negotiate. And so, but that was common. That was common as a kid. That's what we did. And it's now everyone hides behind. I don't want to sound derogatory. I don't want to sound like an old man. It's like. It's just that where we are now, it's that I do the same thing. I hide behind my phone and everything else, or I hide behind a camera and talk to people on YouTube. But it's the face to face. Really, there's so much you can get out of that. You can read the body language. You can read the reaction. You can see their environment. You can see where they're coming from. You can see there's so much that tells you that negotiations outside face to face. It makes it much tougher.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes away to me some of the human aspect of it, and
I would say
that's what's lost in today's.
I agree. I agree with the caveat that I would say you're right, except for the big missing piece for a lot of people is even the ability to read the body language, like people's ability to play. And this is a sweeping generalization, so don't crucify me over this. But I would say like one of the major disconnects because of the way that I wouldn't say hide behind camera, but we reach out through cameras and social media in a different way, is we've lost the ability to read context clues in a lot of body language and gesturing, a lot of the things that aren't being said, right? So we are less of a student of the human condition and our tendencies than we've done, and so we've lost a lot of ability to communicate. And some might argue that it's better because it's like, well, why are we messing around with all these games? Why can't we just be direct about it? Because it's just, I mean, it doesn't work that way.
Human.
Yeah, we're human, and we don't work that way. We don't throw out the final number. We know that you're gonna want to come out lower, so I have to start higher, and you have to start lower, and hopefully we grind out something in between.
This thing you don't necessarily know that. If you are truly communicating, you may find out that they're more than willing to just take you. You're going to take this off their hands. You thought you're going to pay so much, and the car salesman's like, my boss told me I got to move 10 cars this month, so it's he didn't set a price. So it's I mean, there's always going to be a price, but it's basically it's knowing that communication. That's why I love the face to face, the maker space or maker fairs, and the ERF and MRF and all that, because now you get to see the people you watch. You get to see the people you read on Twitter and stuff, and get to find out who they really are, or what they're about. What makes them excited. That's just, there's so much value there.
My God, yes.
Camera can't catch.
I mean, we tried to cover that last week. I mean, that is so spot on, Chuck, because think about like all the crap that we see on Twitter and all this stuff, and people throwing out accusations about all this stuff who have never met, don't know this person at all. And may as well be a Russian bot or whatever. Like, we have no context and all this stuff. And we get drawn into all these like stupid things without even having an understanding of the person to begin with, right? Like, I don't know how many times you've tweeted, I'm like, dude, if you even knew me at all, you'd realize how ridiculous that is to say. And that is why I make a point to try to make myself available for face-to-face and understand who I'm dealing with, and that is such a critical component of actually being a member of a community, right? Is actually like being there at some point. And I know that's not practical for everyone. That is a hard thing, but it changes the entire perception and impression that people have when it's like, oh, there's a real person behind that. And so I think that's also a big part of the value of doing live streams and like letting people see your face and not just being an avatar and some text, right?
There's actually kind of a rule behind this face-to-face aspect, and this is something that has stuck with me my entire life, because I've actually gone through a behavioral therapy. For many that don't know, like, I'm on the autism spectrum, and when I was younger, I had to go through a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy courses, and in learning that, there's this pretty interesting, well-defined rule. It's called the 73855 rule, and what that means is that 7% of the message is actually based off the words that you're saying. 38% comes from the tone of voice, and about 55% comes from subtle body cues like body
That
language.
is very
Uh,
specific
eh,
percentages.
yeah, and so so for those that are happen to be on the spectrum, what ends up happening is you're not able to pick up a large portion of that rule set, like 55%.
Yes.
And part of like as I grew up as as an adolescent into my teens, like I had to train myself to look for specific cues, facial expressions, ways that people interacted in order to try and understand, because that stuff didn't naturally come to me. But as Chuck was mentioning, I feel like we've really lost a lot of that face interaction with people with the advent of technology. And I think that we're seeing kind of this sort of change, this paradigm shift, if you will, of basically having to relearn how to either A, negotiate, or B, just interact with people. Because as you were mentioning, Pooch, just like if you even knew who I was, right,
Yeah.
like in person, and there's that whole missing connection, I think,
Absolutely.
with today's day.
It's funny because if Chuck's rule number one is communication, and what you just said, about the percentages, like we're already negotiating from a major deficit when only a small fraction of that communication is able to come through. So I would say if we're going to throw up rules, like rule number 2 or 3 is like find a way to get to face, or find a way to maximize the communication potential beyond the nonverbal. Because so much of that subtext lies there, so much of the understanding, it's Sun Tzu, like, know your enemy. You shouldn't really view them as an enemy, but that is such a big part of getting to where you need to be.
Exactly.
Well, for example, if a particular company that's given me grief would have been at more
Tell us what's on your
MRFs
mind.
or more IRFs, and we could have talked and we could have got to know each other, would the same have happened? I have doubt. It may still have, but I have doubts. But that makes negotiation easier. It makes communication easier. And sometimes the communication can be there if you don't want nothing, right? You just like, someday maybe I want to sell, rep boxes. Doesn't mean I come to you and negotiate. I may come and get I get to know Pooch in the rep box, and whether he pushed me off a cart or something. But
not bitter.
I had to throw that in there.
I'm gonna,
but it's once I have that relationship, we get along great. We tease each other, and I could easily see us, doing business at some point, and negotiation would probably be easy because we know where we're at. We know what we want.
We have respect for each other.
I want to do Gloop. I spent a lot of time with the Gloop guys, right? We had dinner, and I know your business model and your history and stuff. It's a totally different approach.
Absolutely. Well, and it's a lot harder, guys. I mean, this sounds completely stupid, but it's a lot harder to stab somebody in the back when you're face to face. As funny as that sounds, right? But it's like you wouldn't say that to my face. You're not hearing. If you see like who you're dealing with, you're like, so see the person you're dealing with. Rule 3: see them. However you best can. I want to touch on something, and then we'll take some more chat comments and stuff too. But I brought up earlier on the notion of negotiating with yourself. Are you guys familiar with the term and what that is and why that happens? Because I'm guilty of that, and I definitely have thoughts on it. But I want to know if you guys have ever found yourself in that situation or been negotiating with somebody else that has, and what you do.
Well, you're talking preconceived notions, right?
Yeah, preconceived notions, or a lot of times for me, it's like it goes back to what Andrew was saying, is like people that negotiate are negotiating with themselves don't
Mhm.
know exactly what they're asking for, right? They're second guessing
Mhm.
themselves a lot of times because you're almost overly concerned with, am I going to offend this person? Or, if like I throw this out here, and so unfortunately, it's a sign of
Mhm.
weakness in the sense that you come across as a disadvantaged negotiator when you're,
Mhm.
well, you know what? I want 10. You know what? 10's a bit much. Maybe it's 8. Does 8 sound better?
Mhm.
Like, are you asking the
Yep.
question of the other person? I mean, you've come
So
across that. I know you have.
I
Well,
personally go ahead, Chuck.
no, you
Okay.
go.
so
Andrew's up.
so I personally feel like where this comes from is the inability for one to take the time to actually go through the negotiation process. I see it most of the time happening with, you're trying to sell something secondhand on a marketplace and you have it listed for a price and then someone message you, what's the lowest that you'll take?
Oh, God,
And
I
then
hate
you'll
that.
throw out a number, and
Yeah.
then now you're negotiating with yourself at a position of weakness because, let's say you had it listed for $50 and then someone's like, well, what's the lowest you'll take? And then you'll say, okay, I'll take 40. And then they'll be like, well, will you take 30? And it's like, well, now you've already knocked off $10 of your price. You've already now at a position of weakness. And
Yes.
I think it's because you're just trying to short cycle this. Like you just want to hurry up and get to the number. And, so
Yeah. What are we
you
talking
don't
about here?
actually give, you don't actually give it time to go through with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Chuck, do you have anything to add, or maybe you have a different experience?
No, I mean, I've dealt with that. I think it comes back to step one. If you go into a negotiation with communication first,
Mhm.
if you're negotiating with yourself like that, or preconceived notions, or what you got to get, or um, you put yourself at a disadvantage because you didn't listen. You didn't.
Mhm.
You're in your head. They're saying stuff, and you're not listening. You're
There
in
it
your head.
is.
What can we do? What can I do? You're having a negotiation in here instead of with the other person. It's like, well, why have the negotiation? Why not just, pick your lowest number and say, give me that, or walk away, But so the idea is that if you're doing that to yourself, walk away. If you sense that
Oh.
you're nervous, you're whatever, just make an excuse, oh my God, I gotta use
Mhm.
some bathroom, whatever, walk away, because you're not in a position to
Mhm.
negotiate.
I think you
You're
just hit
not.
4 and 5. So the first thing that you said that is really just spot on is like, I would distill it down to stop and
Mhm.
don't be afraid of the silence. So say what you
Yes.
want and let
Mhm.
them respond, right? Like so often, and I
Mhm.
am terrible at this because it's like I have this, it's tough when you're podcasting and doing all this stuff. It's like what if I throw this out there and nobody's going to answer, or you're left with crickets? There is
Mhm.
power in silence, guys. A lot of power when you're
So much
negotiating.
power.
Stop,
Mhm.
because now you're putting the other person in like this. I need your response, right? Like
Mhm.
and a lot of times they can say something, and if you just sit there and you do, just look at them, you're gonna kind of
Mhm.
almost put them on the back foot. So there's kind of some weird little games and stuff that happen. I mean, that though, right, Chuck? Where it's like you just give them that little body language thing, and then you see that's when you start to see people start to question themselves. And so I'm not advocating necessarily for playing the games, but
No, I mean,
Mhm.
that would kill negotiation with me.
yeah, you
If
don't
you
like
go
that.
in, if we're talking, and if we're talking, you pause and you're sitting like that, my reaction is, okay, it was nice talking to you, and I'm gone.
Okay, now what if that's a good point. Now what if I do that and I go like this? And for those that are listening back, that's a me stopping and thinking look, right? So
Mhm.
that's a completely different body language or
So
indicator,
Mhm.
I was
and
just going to
Yep.
point out, you put your fingers up in your mouth, you put your eyes
Mhm.
in the air. I'm like, okay, he's thinking.
he's
I'll
thinking.
give him time.
Yep.
Yeah,
But the
no
other
problem with
move you
thinking.
made, what I saw you before,
Right.
is you lean back in your chair and you stared at me. At
Mhm.
that point, you're not thinking. You're screwing with me.
I gave him blue
So
steel.
see you later.
Yeah,
Magnum.
so
Yeah.
what I call this, and I believe this is talked about in that book, is essentially distorting the other's reality. And so you use silence to your advantage by
Psychological
basically
warfare.
forcing them. This is literally it. That's
Yeah,
literally it. Is you're using your body language and this position to distort the other person's reality, and the idea is that you are trying to get them to basically break from where they are, or agree to your terms, or just progress to that next step, and that next step being getting to that fair sort of, okay, this is now that the reality is kind of distorted, this is where the negotiation actually starts, where it's capable of saying, okay, this is fair, or no, this makes sense, and it's the back and forth where you got to figure out who's going to hold their ground longer.
Yeah.
Right.
Not a
Or in the
healthy place, though, huh? Part of the process.
Or in the process of that communication or back and forth, you assess, like what I've recently done. I assess there is no solution. There is no answer. There is no agreement that we can come to. So it's cool. We discussed it. Appreciate the talk.
Yep.
I gotta go because I'm wasting my time.
Now that's rule 5. So, or I don't know. This is arbitrary. I'm throwing it out there, but I'm gonna say
too many
5.
rules.
Don't be afraid to walk away, right? So, like, let's talk about, like, if you're not able to walk away from the deal, you are immediately. And for those that follow me on Twitter, you know that I tweeted that out earlier. I like to allude to the conversation earlier in the week, so you get subtle clues in terms of what we might be, thinking about. But if you are not prepared to walk away, you are at a disadvantage. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can. My brother, who's a salesman, he said you can never be in love with what you're negotiating for, because you can always get somewhere else or whatever. You may have to pay more or whatever, but you can never be in love with what you're negotiating for, because then you're at a disadvantage.
I like that.
And so you got to be willing to walk away.
You got to be willing to walk away. And that's not the problem is that can be so abused, right?
You can hold back.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I think if you communicate to the person, it's like, you know what, we can't, just because we can't come to an agreement now, it's like we have to understand, what is the time frame? Is this like, this has to be dealt with now? Or, you know what, let's just keep working at it. Like, we need to take a break and step back. I think that's a perfectly reasonable approach. It just depends on what we're dealing with. And obviously, the bigger the stakes are, if you're buying a house, I had a realtor that said that, look, the deal of a lifetime, or the house you're in love with comes along once a week. It's so easy to get emotionally attached to things, and you can't do that, right? You gotta just You gotta give it some time and be patient, and that is a hard thing for a lot of people. But obviously, the bigger the stakes are, the more important I would say that becomes. And so it's okay to pause, and it's okay to just suspend negotiation for the time being. Rule 6. Call it that. I don't know. What do you?
Well,
go for it.
If
Andrew.
you don't come to an agreement, if you don't come to you do your negotiation, then what did you just have? You had a communication. For future, which is what I said was most important as far as up front. So the next time you meet up, you've already established a relationship, a communication, and you've got time to think. Or maybe they're in a different position the next time they're willing to come down in price, or maybe you're in a different position where you can pay more. You don't know, but you've already established that communication, and that's key.
Yeah,
and that's why this whole fiasco I'm going through was just more upsetting than anything. Is you could have just called me, you could have emailed me, you could have done something.
Just reach
You
out.
did what you did.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all.
Yeah.
It's that to me and it becomes disrespect. And that the one thing that bugs me the most of all, if you disrespect me, I'm hard to get back.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sure. So, Andrew, maybe you can talk to this too. Like, and I alluded to this earlier. The fear of offending somebody, right? Like, because we use these tactics. So like you throw out a number that's so low, and the other person goes, "You have offended me," right? And they threaten to walk away. So there's a lot of this crappy posturing and stuff that happens, right? Like where there's a difference between walking away, suspended negotiation, and pretending you're walking away, and then somebody, no, come back. I was just, like, there's all this crummy song and dance that comes along with it. What are your feelings on this?
Well, so I think ultimately, in negotiation, when you're talking with, trying to get something, no, the word no is incredibly powerful because there's so many different meanings to it, and in the aspect of it's another opportunity to get at again what it is that you really want. So in the terms of what you're saying, like being afraid of offending, like you have to kind of as one going into negotiation put that aside and just accept that no is a potential answer, but it's also a potential answer for you. You
Hmm.
don't have to agree, like, and it's whether it's trying to get a higher paying job, or you go to your boss and you're like, are you crazy, like you're not worth that, or whatever, like, yeah, there's some derogatory potential things there, but also at the same time, saying no on both sides is a position of power for both things, and allows you to again get deeper at what it is that you're trying to get, like what was that main goal, I think. So you have to kind of like put that aside. You might offend someone. It is what it is. It's a part of that process, I think. you
Chuck,
know
what would you add to that?
Uh, I agree with that. As far as you may offend someone, but don't do it. Think through it. Don't try not to
hmm
do it. But it's like
Sure.
I look at I negotiate every day with my comment or my viewers. Right? They leave a comment telling
Hmm.
me maybe what I should do different, what I should do better, things they didn't like, things they did like.
hmm
That's negotiation, and it's I don't get to see their face, and I don't get to
Mm.
do that. But if someone comes in, like did happen to me, I give away my latest profiles, and I did a comparison, and one guy went so far as to say I was too lazy to make a zero point 0.6 profile, even though I just
Thanks,
done that.
guy.
And it's something like that. I mean, if I saw that guy face to face, he would have probably said that to my face.
No.
But
hmm
the idea is that I go through all this work to make these profiles to share them with the audience, and you just called me lazy,
Yeah.
hmm
and that okay, you just offended me. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm not going to hear a single thing you're saying. You're probably do it again. You're
hmm
probably blocked. Because it is my channel, and I don't want to read that. I put a lot of work in these
hmm
things. I don't want to read that. So it's part of
Sure.
so to do that face to face, you wouldn't do it. So why would you do it in a comment? And that's the
Sure.
only part when you're hiding behind a keyboard. So think that through. When you're
hmm
doing something, we all do it. We all have our moments. We
Yeah.
regret saying things. But as you're going through it, before you, in your negotiation, before you go that far, think about it, and
Yeah.
maybe just don't say it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's a really good point.
Ground rules for human decency in what you're saying to
hmm
people. Obviously, that almost feels like it should go without saying, but sadly in this day and age it does not. So if you don't have
hmm
something nice
it,
to say, don't say it. Think about what you're going to say before you say it. All those things apply
it
absolutely for
piles
negotiation.
on.
hmm
It piles on
Oh my
because
god.
someone says it, and then someone jumps on top of that and jumps on top. And then the people who want to say something nice are squeezed out, which is what happens in these Facebook groups and everything else. So I try to be very protective of that, so the beginners, so the people getting started don't feel pushed away, so they'll watch my content, feel they can contact me, and that's why I love Patreon,
Yeah.
because there I can actually face to face if I had to, but I can one on one with people and I can help them, and um,
Yeah.
that's why I hit on that is think before you say that.
hmm
Absolutely.
That's a
Guys,
great
we're
point.
we're running a touch long, but I feel like this conversation is good, and I just wanted to take one more comment from the chat on YouTube. Again, if you're listening back on this, we record live every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, and it's a great way to interact with the conversation if you'd like. Vishal, who may have dropped off because he's got a business to run too, had a really, really good question. I want to wrap up with a business specific negotiation question. He asks, for small businesses out there that have limited money and resources and stuff like that, where you might be negotiating for materials and supplies and stuff like that. Chuck, you've experienced it. Andrew, you've experienced it. I've certainly experienced it.
hmm
What tips would we have for negotiating better pricing from a vendor out there? So, Chuck, I want to start with you, and then Andrew, you can jump on.
Again, this comes back to communication. What is it that they need? What is their situation? Do they maybe need more marketing? Do they need more
money.
promotion? What can I give that's not necessarily money?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I need certain things, but I can fill a gap that maybe they're paying for some Google ads, not getting the results, when maybe I could do a free commercial for you, you know, a couple commercials. I'm like, you know, we'll call it a sponsorship, but you give me, you know, some material. So it's that point, it's a barter system, right? And that again comes out of the communication. Once I know, because even the biggest business has things they're overpaying for, things they need, or even that particular person may have a certain goal they got to hit, you know, to get their bonus or whatever. Those things by talking.
That's a fantastic point. Like, not assuming, this goes back to our cultural thing. Like, don't assume, like, there's those out there that would say everything is negotiable, right? There is a point, there is something that people might want out there. And sometimes it's just having that conversation, like you're saying, Chuck, to know what those other things are. It might not just be about money. It may be times that it is like, look, you don't have anything I want. I need money for this. And that's fine. But having that conversation and getting there, I'd say more often than not, I have found by asking the question, like, hey, is there another way we can help you? Or if we do some social media around this or whatever, like, is there more value I can bring because I have limited funds? Ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the question. That's a fantastic piece of advice. Andrew, what would you add?
Yeah. So, you know, I think ultimately for what's worked best for us is being honest with, you know, the vendor or whomever we're trying to contact with, basically saying where we are and, you know, communicating what we're doing. Share that story, share that vision that you have, and see if they're willing to work with you. You know, there have been many times where when we started communicating with a, you know, packaging supplier, they were like, oh, hey, this is cool. You know, while you're not making the minimum order quantities that we would typically require, maybe if you grow, we could see that happen. So what we'll do is we'll offer you an ability to order outside of those minimum order quantities for a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. And that all started with, again, just being honest and not over representing yourself. Because I think many times, like, I've seen people like they'll over represent themselves of, oh, you know, I'm going to order 10,000 pieces, you know, I need your best pricing, but I only want to order 1,000 pieces right now. And it's like, no, say where you are, say you hope to get to 10,000 pieces, and just be honest, because I think that goes so much further than the other way. And that's what's helped for us.
That's fantastic. The thing I would add is, I'm just going to mirror, I think, something Chuck said earlier in a way. It's like, build a rapport, guys, that go down. So let's use the case of my acrylic supplier. We buy a ton of acrylic for the boxes and stuff that we cut and whatnot. When I first started working with them, I regularly made a point, even though they were not close, they were an hour away. I drove down there. I met my sales rep face to face, and I said, this is me. This is my business. This is the product. I brought the box. I said, this is what we're doing. Okay. I am real. I'm not just the guy emailing you that you get 10 emails from every day asking you for the best price. Okay. I'm a small business. We've got limited funds and stuff like that. What is it you can, and it changed everything, because now it's like, this is cool. I want to be involved. I want to help this guy. Like, and when you're negotiating with people that are your friends, it feels less like a negotiation, like Chuck was saying, and more like a, hey, let's figure this out together. Right? Like, that's really, really what it's all about. And my God, is that so lost on, like, a lot of people? Like I said, like, people just don't, like, get off your butt, go down and meet the people that you're working with, because you will get so much further. The other example of that I would give, my UPS driver. Okay. You wouldn't think that you're negotiating with these guys at all. I spend the time to help him load the truck and talk to him every day. And I love this guy. UPS in general drives me absolutely crazy. And when this guy retires, it's going to be the saddest day of my life. But like, he makes my life as a business owner so much better. And he elevates my impression of UPS and all the crap that they do otherwise to a completely different place. And because I have that rapport with him, and like, I know his personal life, I know his family, I see him almost every day. And I am more than happy to give him a great, present at Christmas, because when I'm in a bind and I get that last minute order in that's rush and whatever, and I have to leave and pick up my kids, I know I can text him and give him the door code and say, hey man, I got a package. Like, I know I don't have a pickup schedule, but can you swing by while you're on your route? And he is more than happy to do that. Right. So a lot of times you don't even realize what you're even negotiating. That's not a service UPS offers. Okay. It's like having a personal driver, and I don't want to get him in trouble, but I love this man, and it has so much bearing on our success, because I realize how critical shipping is to our success as a company as well. So you got to know where those values lie for you, and put in the work. Right? Because I would never be able to get just any average UPS guy to do anything remotely close to that. Put in the work, build a rapport. Guys.
Love it.
What a great conversation. I feel like we could do a whole nother one on it. I mean, there's so much to negotiating. Andrew, you got a great book tip. So for those of you like reading, there's probably an audiobook version if you want to listen to it.
I believe so.
Being a good negotiator is so important to your success as a small business, I would say. And it doesn't mean you have to be an a-hole. There's a respectful way to go about doing it. And you will save so much potential time and money and frustration over the course of your professional career by just having these conversations, asking these questions. A lot of times negotiations just like ask the question, hey, if I order this much more, if I can buy a pallet of this and we can split it up over the course of the year, can I get a better rate? Yeah. Oh, sure. Of course you can. But that doesn't get offered up. So just asking the questions, having the rapport, it's super critical. And a really, really important tool in your toolbox. So there's a psychological component, being a student of the human condition, understanding what people want, how to read people. There's a lot there. It takes years to master, but well worth doing, in my opinion. Bring us home, Chuck. Absolutely. Wrap it all up. What do you think? Anything to add? Put a bow on it.
Watch Film Friday.
There he is with the plug. Every opportunity. I love it. Andrew.
Yeah.
Last thoughts.
I think again, Chuck's opened it up with communicate. Start that conversation, keep that conversation going. Just because it's a no now, just because you didn't get to a yes at this moment, does not mean that it's the end of the story. Just keep on keeping on, I guess.
Well said. Guys, Chuck, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to our guest. Please go check out his YouTube channel. He is at CHEP. That's Chuck Hellebuyck Electronics Products.
Yeah. Or just go filmitfriday.com.
Filmitfriday.com. Go check out his latest video that he teased. Go buy his stuff. He is a fantastic, prolific communicator and contributor to this 3D printing community and electronics community. So thank you again for your time. We have to do it again soon, my friend. Guys in the chat, thank you. Guys and gals, like, subscribe, hit us up on the Twitter. Let us know what you want to talk about. Keep coming on. We're having such a blast with these conversations. I hope you've learned something. I hope this is useful. If you're listening back after the fact, consider joining us sometime if you can live. We love having you be part of the conversation too. Until next Friday, everybody. This has been Pooch of Repkord, Chuck,
Andrew of 3D Gloop,
and Andrew.
Chuck Hellebuyck, Film Friday.
Signing off. Happy weekend, everybody. Be well. Be good to each other. Negotiate. Love ya.